Welcome back to Behind the Wire on Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Robert Burwell, and I'm also the president of the Washington 3%. Today we're going to be talking about the Parents' Bill of Rights. For those of you not familiar with it, it is something that was passed into law last year. Basically give parents the right to know what's going on with their child in school. Before, we had a lot of problems with the schools not telling parents about certain things that were going on in their lives that the school knew about that parents didn't, and they would not tell the parents. Backstory on this: in 2023, a petition was circulated throughout the state. It was Initiative 2081, the Parents' Bill of Rights Initiative. It gathered 448,000 signatures and was presented to the legislature at the end of the year and to be put on the ballot in 2024. What this bill did was it basically told the schools that we, the parents, have a right to know everything that's going on with our child. You can't hide anything from us. We have a say in curriculum, things like that. But that we, as parents, need to know anything that happens with our child in the schools because we're their parent. We have the right to know what is going on with our children. So like I said, this was scheduled to be put on the ballot in 2024. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, during the 2024 legislative session, the Democrats brought it up on both the House and the Senate floor, and they passed it as written. They approved it, and they made it law. Now, it was scheduled to take effect in January of this year, so they got it passed, and everything was good. Everybody was happy. People were celebrating. Thank God. Finally, they've come to their senses. They're proving something that makes sense. They're, being moderate for once. Everybody was shocked. They're being moderate. Everybody was happy. They were celebrating. Some of us, myself included, we smelled BS. We knew they weren't sincere. And we knew this was not going to stand. And the reason we know that is because a leopard doesn't change his spots. They're radical leftists. They're not going to change. Our basic reasoning was that 2024 is an election year. Okay? This initiative was wildly popular. They were talking about it on TV. They were talking about it on the radio talk shows. It was all over media, that this was going to be coming up for a vote, and it was time to take our rights as parents back. They saw the shift in the country starting to swing more to the right. Granted, this state is in no danger of turning red anytime soon, but they knew that people were getting fed up with the far left BS. And so they saw this, and they took their chance, and they passed it into law, because 2024 is an election year, right? What better way to ingratiate yourself with all the pissed off parents that have been going to school board meetings and yelling and screaming about not knowing what's going on with their children in the schools? What better way to get them back on their side than by passing this, right? This election year, we gotta make ourselves look good, so that's why they passed it. They'll never admit that, but that's why they passed it. And what we said when we made these claims that they only passed it because it was election year was as soon as they get past the election, they're gonna get rid of it or gut it or something. They're not gonna let it stand once the election's over. And it was, though, in King County, it was immediately challenged in, far left crazy town, King County. It was immediately challenged. Not sure by who. I didn't pay that close of attention to it, and because of the outcome, I didn't really go in and look up the details on it, because I just know they challenged it on constitutionality according to the Washington State Constitution. King County Superior Court judge denied it and said that it was constitutional and it could stand as written. So it survived the constitutional challenge in King County. In leftist King County, it survived a constitutional challenge. So that was shocking, but it's so well written, and it's common sense. Parents have rights. So it was upheld. So that was that was pretty exciting that it actually held up in King County. So we're thinking, well, maybe it might stand after all. But you know what? 2024 election's over, and as people predicted, myself included, as soon as the 2025 legislative session started, one of the first things they did was introduce 2 new bills to gut it. Just like clockwork. They can't contain the crazy. Common sense doesn't work with them. They didn't do it for common sense. They did it for votes, and now they got the votes, and they're safe for a couple more years. They feel secure in their positions, so they're going right back to their radical leftist garbage, where they think they know better than you, that the children belong to the state, not to you, and that they know better. That's the hallmark of communism, is we know better. Sit down, shut up, we'll tell you what to do. We're in charge. And that's the attitude they have. So anyways, this became law in January of this year, is when the law actually started. It actually became law in January of this year, and 2 weeks later, 2 initiatives were rolled out to gut it. Shocking. So anyways, what they're trying to claim, they're trying to claim that they're introducing these bills to bring it into to bring it into line with state laws that already exist on the books, and the Senate bill, which is Senate Bill 5781, is basically, it's focused on actually doing that to some extent. It's only concerning itself with the state laws that already exist on timelines as far as notifications are concerned. So like, if something happens to your kid's school, they get in an altercation or whatever in school, they have 48 hours to let you know about it. And that's basically what they did. They changed some of those that were, in the initial bill. Everything was immediate notification. They said, well, we already have laws on the books that say we have 48 hours and, that type of thing. So that's all the Senate bill's doing, is put in line with laws that already exist on the books as far as notifications are concerned. So that's not too bad. I mean, I think they should notify you immediately anytime anything happens with your child, but it's not that egregious. So that one passed the Senate. The House has their own version of the bill, which is House Bill 1296. So now that's in the House, we're in crazy town, because the House is radical leftist lunacy. Everything bad that is going on in the state is centered on the House. The Senate usually goes along, but the real crazy comes out of the House, and they're not disappointing on this one. House Bill 1296 doesn't protect parents' rights in the Parents' Bill of Rights. What House Bill 1296 does is establish rights and protections for children and schools. So basically, they're taking your parents' rights and they're going to transfer those to the schools and the children. That's what they're going to do. So I don't know how you can call the Parents' Bill of Rights when you give them the rights to the kids into the school, but that's what they're doing. That's how it works in Crazy Town. The Parents' Bill of Rights means that we take the parents' rights away and we give it to the children, to the schools. So there's two main points that they're attacking in House Bill 1296. They are attacking the parts of the bill that have to do with medical treatment and services, and they're also attacking the section that has to do with the records that the schools keep. So under the original initiative 2081, which was made into law in January, parents are supposed to receive prior notice of all medical treatment unless in an emergency situation, and must be alerted if the school arranges for outside follow-up care. So under the bill, if your kid goes in and sees a counselor about how do I get on, how do I get something done, like, reproductive health care, how do I get pills, how do I get abortion, things like that. The school, and they recommended to go see a, abortion clinic or these doctors that can prescribe pills without parental consent, that they would have to tell you anyways. That's the way it was originally passed in law. They have to tell you. If they tell your kid to go get follow-up treatment, if they counsel them for mental health issues, they had to tell you immediately. That's the way it was in the original bill. Well, under the House Bill 1296, it removes the requirements for schools to provide notification about medical services and treatment. So if they send your kid out to see a doctor or some mental health person or whatever, they don't have to tell you. They don't have to tell you. Period. It's your kid. Don't you think you should know? The state doesn't think you should know. The result of this is that parental consent for medical procedures for minors are already dictated by state and federal law. I mean, as far as medical procedures, they can't. Well, I'm not saying they can't, but there's exceptions in state law already for certain medical procedures, like abortion and stuff, that they don't have to tell you about. So they're saying, well, we already got laws for this, so they're just going to override what this law says, where they have to notify you. We're going to go back to those laws which say we don't have to notify you. And those type of things are already dictated by state and federal law. The age of consent in Washington is 18, and it has exceptions that include STDs, mental health, and reproductive health. Those things they don't have to be 18 to access in the Washington state laws that are on the books. And this initiative, when it was passed into law, would have changed that. So instead of letting those bad laws go away, as far as I'm concerned, they're saying nope, we're gonna go back to that, so we don't have to tell you about that, and we're gonna let kids do these things without parental permission. So that's pretty bad. That they're going to allow your children to do these things and not tell you. I mean, you should at least be notified if they're sending your kid off to have an abortion or get on birth control if your kid has STD. I think as a parent you should probably know that. But not under this. So as far as the records are concerned, under Initiative 2081, the law that was passed, it defined public school records in there. It's saying these are what public school records are, and parents are supposed to have access to public school records. So the public school records that were included under the definition of public school records were all medical records, mental health records, counseling records, attendance records, disciplinary records, job counseling records, learning challenges testing records, and any other student-specific files, documents, or other materials that are maintained by the public school. So basically, it said under the initial law that you should have access to anything on paper about your kid. Anything that has to do with your child that's in a record, you as a parent should have access to. It's your kid. You should have access to it. Under House Bill 1296, it replaces the wording public school records with the words educational records. Okay, so they're no longer public school records. They're separating now. There's educational records. And that's what they're saying that the bill covers, is just educational records. It does not include, and these are called out in the bill, it does not include healthcare records and anything to do with mental health counseling or anything like that. That's all falls under healthcare records. So those do not count as educational records. So you don't have the right to see those records. So if your kid's seeing a counselor, if your kid's suicidal, or if your kid is concerned about their gender identity and wants counseling on what they should do, things like that, that under the new bill will no longer be your business as their parent. You don't need to know if your kid is suicidal or if your kid wants to have gender reassignment therapy or any of that kind of stuff. So basically, it allows them to hide what's going on with your child as far as their mental health or their physical health is concerned. They don't have to tell you under this House Bill 1296. They don't have to tell you because they know better, right? I mean, if your kid wants to identify as a goldfish, then they don't have to tell you that. They can just go ahead and let your kid do whatever they want as far as that stupidity is concerned. And it's none of your business as a parent. Let your kid go, counsel your child on where to go get an abortion. They don't have to tell you. If your child wants gender affirming care, they can send them someplace to talk to somebody about how to go about that, and they don't have to tell you. They can give them advice on that. They don't have to tell you. Under the law that was passed, it was our initiative, they had to tell you those things, but now they're taking that power away from you. They don't feel that you need to know what's going on in your child's life. If your child's suicidal, they don't have to tell you. And then if the kid commits suicide, well, those aren't public records. We don't have to show you that. So we can absolve ourselves of all responsibility for not informing the parent that your child's suicidal. This is egregious beyond belief. But welcome to Washington. Here in Washington, children aren't yours. They belong to the state. Okay, you're just a breeder. You don't know enough to raise your own children. The state knows better. You're an idiot. It's none of your business what's going on with your child. The state knows better. That's what this law is. They're gutting our law that we passed. They gave parents' rights, and they're taking control of your child's life. They're telling you it's none of your damn business what's going on with your child, that they know better. That's communism, folks. That's communism. Straight up communism. Communism is we know better. Sit down, shut up, do what we tell you. That's what this is. They're not your children anymore. They belong to the state. So, anyways, like I said, both of those have passed out of the respective houses, naturally on party lines. Democrats 100% for, Republicans against. But Republicans don't have numbers to do anything, so they both passed out of their respective houses. But there is still time to stop this. About the only thing we got is right now it is currently going to executive committee in the Senate for a hearing on March 27th. It's into the reconciliation process now, where they have to take the House bill and the Senate bill and put them together and come up with a bill that both chambers agree on. So that's the stage we're in. And like I said, the first hearing is March 27th on the Senate side, looking at the House version of the bill. So what we can do right now, the only thing we can do right now is contact your senators, tell them this is BS. We, the parents, have rights. You cannot take our rights as parents away. We know better. The school doesn't. They're our children, not yours. And tell them, if they vote yes on this, you as a parent, this is your children we're talking about. Tell these people, if they vote yes on this, if they vote to take your rights over your own children away from you, that they will never get elected again in this state, period. They're out. They're gone. That's the only way we stop the stupidity, is get these radical lunatics out of office. This is not their little dictatorship. This is not their little commune where they're in charge of your children. They're your children. You are their parent. The state is not. Tell them if they vote yes on this, they're gone. Period. You're not going to stand for this. You know, honestly, myself, if I still had children at home, they wouldn't be in Washington schools. No way. Not now. They're just leftist indoctrination centers. That's all they are anymore. They're failing. They don't teach kids to read and write. They don't even know basic stuff. They're failing. They spend most of their time teaching their own ideologies and political leanings to our kids. They don't concentrate enough on teaching them basic things that they should. And that's proven by the test scores. They're so bad. I wouldn't have kids in schools in the state. If I had kids right now, I'd homeschool them. But unfortunately, I know most people in Washington, you can't do that. Homeschooling is not practical for you. You know, the cost of living in the state's ridiculous. The taxes are through the roof, and they're proposing a bunch more this year. So homeschooling is not an option for a lot of people. It's just not. And so the only thing you can do is fight this. And if you're a parent in Washington State, you need to fight this. You need to tell them, no way, stop it. Stop the stupidity. We're done with your stupid garbage. If you continue down this path, you won't be in power anymore. That's what you need to tell them. And we're running out of time. So you need to contact your senators now. And once they reconcile it and it goes to both houses, call your representative and your senator both. Tell them, stop the stupidity. We're not going to stand for it, or you're gone. And with that, that's all I got to say about this. Like I said, if you got the means, get your kids out of Washington public schools for your children's sake. And with that, that's all I got. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you back here next time on Rebel Radio, Behind the Wire. And good night.